Defining the elements, number 2 in my series. Defining an element. An element is a unique area of existence, meaning that each element is different. None of them are the same. Elements accomplish one of two goals. The first goal elements have is that they allow you to interact with the world around you. They're like a road that you drive down or a door that you open. They give you the ability to go and do things. Without the first goal, you wouldn't be able to interact, wouldn't be able to do anything in the world around you. The second goal of the elements influence how you interact with the world around you. That is, how do you drive down that road? Are you drunk? Do you obey the laws? Do you go fast? Do you go slow? Do you stay within the lines? Or the door. How do you walk through the door? Do you walk through? Do you run through? Do you fall through? Two different types of forces require two different types of elements. Physical elements are the first type of elements. These give you the ability to interact with the world around you. These are like the door and the wall that I previously mentioned. They're also like a battery within inside of you. Each element has its own battery within you. And you have different strengths from each element. These different strengths determine how big that battery is and how much of a charge it's willing to take. And you can only experience so much of that element filling up that battery so much. Once that battery gets so full, it needs to discharge itself. This is why people get angry, upset. All of a sudden they become withdrawn, they act differently for one reason or another. It's because that battery has achieved its maximum charge and they can't put any more into it. The elements, they're all around you. They're always there waiting to be used. In order to get away from you, so that the battery doesn't discharge, requires you to purposely go and find a spot where the element doesn't exist or that's weak enough that it doesn't influence the battery within you. The spiritual elements, page 1, allow you to act within the world around you. Just having the ability isn't enough. These tell you how you use that ability to interact. This is how you walk through the door. This is how you use the charge created within the battery. The physical element alone just creates the battery. The spiritual elements are like the wire. They're the equipment that the battery is hooked up to. People tend to subconsciously use one element more than the others. Different people use different elements. And some of these elements in the spiritual are easier to use than others because you're just more accustomed to them. These elements, they have to be forced into place. At least the ones you don't normally use need to be forced. Spiritual elements, page 2. The spiritual elements have several states to them. The first state is unused. That is, the element has no influence over you. You can't influence that element. It's something that you have to seriously work at to be able to work with. The second state, it's unbalanced. That means you have no control over it, this element, but you've used it enough that its opposing element, which I'll get into later, goes and has influence and control over this element. The third state, the balanced element that you control, is that you've learned how this element works. You've used it enough that it balances itself with its opposing element. I'll get into the balancing and the controlling of the elements later. First, the physical elements. The illustration shows matter, earth at the top. Matter takes the place of the old idea of earth. It's a physical object, anything that contains atoms, blood, water, the actual molecules of air, of oxygen, that's also matter. Opposing matter is process. That takes the place of fire. The fire isn't the heat, it's not the smoke, it's not the flame, it's not the ash that's created. The fire is the process that creates all these things. It's movement, it's motion, it's change. It allows things to interact with each other. It allows you to go and pick something up. Well, the spiritual elements are how you pick it up. The process allows you to actually do it. Now, the old idea of air is taken by space. That's the empty area between objects. And you look out the window and you see something sit there in the lawn. Between you and that is empty space. There may be all kinds of atoms of oxygen, hydrogen, whatever gases are floating there. This is empty space. The space is an empty area between those objects. Connections. This takes the place of water. This is the ties between objects. Quite often they tend to be emotional in nature, or they create motions or feelings or effects within you or within someone else. The spiritual elements, the second type of elements. This takes the old idea of spirit and breaks it up into 4 different places. You have letting go at the top, which is Zen. It represents peace and tranquility. You have no cares and no worries, although you can still interact with the world around you. Desire opposes Zen. It's an internal stimulation. It's a need to experience. It's desire. It breaks up peace and tranquility because you need to do something. Then you have focus, which is the elimination of destructive influences. It means you see what you want, you go after it. Nothing gets in your way. And you have altered states. This increases the influences, which tend to be destructive or distractive. It lets you examine all these disruptive and destructive influences and work with them. Using a set system allows you to easily define the elements. You can tell which element is what and which element is responsible for what. But this system I'm using redefines the idea of 5 elements. The old idea of 5 elements now becomes outdated. My system shows that there are 2 different types of elements, and it tells you how to define them, how they're used, how they work within you. And each type of element has 4 different types of elements within it, each definable in its own way.